What's up, everybody? Today we're going to go into PEDs 101. Are you ready to begin your anabolic cycle journey? That's a question, not a statement. So, just to introduce myself, I'm Jack Singleton. I have my master's degree in drug discovery and my bachelor's degree in neuroscience and biology. For a disclaimer, I am not a doctor and this is not medical advice, so don't take anything I say seriously. Here's an outline of what I'm going to be going over here. We're going to start with the risk profile of anabolic steroids. Then we're going to go into the benefits of the anabolic steroids, when you think you should be starting, some of the questions that might come up, and some of the answers that you will need, what you will actually need to get started on your anabolic journey, what's the difference between blasting and cruising versus cycling on and off, and then some discussion between what are the differences between male and female choices when it comes to using anabolics. To start with some of the risks, I think some of the most common are cardiovascular issues. You're going to see higher cholesterol values, typically poor cholesterol as well, so your LDL is going to be tanked, or your LDL will be high and your HDL will be tanked, so you expect to see that with higher doses of anabolics. You're also going to run into potential blood pressure issues, especially if you have a history of high blood pressure. There will be an increase in heart size. Just as the heart just as the muscles grow, the heart is going to grow as well. It is just another muscle, so the more stress it has as it's being worked, the more it's going to grow. That's how muscles grow, and that's how steroids affect muscle growth. You're also increasing your risk of stroke or heart attack due to some of the previous listed issues that could lead down the road to a heart attack or a stroke because of a blood clot, potentially leading to one of those issues. Then we have our liver and kidney issues. So anabolic steroids, specifically orals, will tend to affect the liver and kidneys more often, which is why you'll see the suggested use by most people will be to run orals for a very short period of time to reduce liver stress. It's also not recommended to be run by itself. You would typically run a testosterone base instead of your only oral steroids. There's going to be more reason for this coming up. So with those liver and kidney issues, you'd probably see high liver enzymes, so indicative of a stressed liver. And then you'd also see some fluid retention, typically within the ankles and the wrists. And that is kind of correlated to the high blood pressure. If your body is not processing electrolytes correctly, you're going to have fluid retention, which is going to lead to high blood pressure. So a lot of these things are interrelated. Our organ systems are very connected. So you're going to see a lot of crossover with these risks. Then you have your various neurological and hormonal risks that could potentially come up, such as hyperlibido. You have a overusual sex drive compared to the general public, which could potentially cause issues in relationships. You have sleep difficulty, which can also affect your physical health. Emotional changes for better or for worse, overconfidence, balding, gynecomastia, so the growth of female breast tissue in a male. You also will see acne and irregular menstrual cycles for women. So that is something to keep in mind of if you are a woman thinking about taking anabolics, is your choices may depend on if you're willing to compromise your menstrual cycle, which is something a lot of women care about. And if you potentially want to have kids, this is something that you're going to want to think about. And we get in the benefits, which after a laundry list of risks, we have a somewhat shorter list of potential benefits. So I think to be fair, a good picture of the benefits would be someone like Phil Heath, who is clearly a hyper-responder to anabolics. And it's not a good representation of if you should take them, but a great picture of what can be accomplished if you do take them at the highest level of competitive bodybuilding. So what are some of the benefits? Increased muscle mass, that could be fairly obvious. Enhanced recovery, so the recovery of the muscle is going to be faster. However, the tendons itself, which could go into the risks, is you have a higher tendency to be injured because that enhanced recovery is going to cause you to be able to lift more frequently, which is going to put stress on the joints. And then that's also going to lead to, as you'll see, you'll have less body fat, increase strength output, which that strength output will lead to potentially more injuries. However, you'll be recovering at a fast rate. Some of the other benefits we get from anabolic steroids are an improved physical appearance overall, which kind of has to do with some of the previous listed points of you have less body fat. Your body's going to do more lipolysis, which is the breakdown of fat molecules. You're going to look and appear to have more muscle because one of the things testosterone and other anabolics do is they increase the glycogen that we're able to store in our bodies. You may also see an increase in facial hair for some individuals who may be struggling to grow facial hair, and then jaw and bone structure. So you're going to have thicker bones. This is why a lot of the drugs were developed to begin with were for individuals who had very low bone mineral density, and certain steroids were able to increase that bone density to make them stronger and no longer be susceptible to their injuries that they were getting from having weak and brittle bones. The other kind of contradictory to the risks, it depends on what you're using, how you're using it, is an improved emotional state. So some individuals may find that when they're natural, they have low testosterone and low sex drive. And when they are taking testosterone, they actually have a more stable blood level of testosterone instead of having those peaks and valleys that you get throughout the day and potentially super crash testosterone. When you're taking external testosterone, you're going to have more steady peaks and troughs, especially if you're injecting more frequently, which I would highly recommend in order to keep your blood levels stable. And that stable blood levels will also decrease the potential risk of estrogen conversion, which is one of the reasons we get most of the side effects is actually high estrogen that could lead to fluid retention and high blood pressure. So stability in testosterone levels increase libido for individuals who may have low libido, and then an overall improved self-esteem, self-image. And a lot of this comes from just the presence of testosterone makes an individual have more masculine traits, such as confidence, such as arrogance, and walking around with the ability that I feel good, I look good, and I control the things around me. That is a heightened sense that individuals get when taking testosterone. The other benefit is competitive bodybuilding. Pretty much every competitor bodybuilder that is a IFBB pro is on anabolic steroids. And if they aren't, well, I'd like to see that. So if you're trying to be in competitive bodybuilding and you need to get the upper hand against all the other individuals who are using anabolics, there you go. So you want to start PEDs. What are your goals? Are you doing this because you want to compete? Are you doing this because you have low testosterone and are trying to bring your levels up so that you feel like a normal human being or a normal male? Or you're a female who has low testosterone, very low testosterone, and you're trying to get a higher dose in order to be able to put on muscle because you're being limited by your physiology. There's also the potential for sports, and I put it in here because it is more common in sports than a lot of people think. I think your average NFL, NBA, MLB star is likely using something that is a form of a PED, performance enhancing drug. But that has the potential for cheating, whereas in competitive bodybuilding, there is no drug testing. So I wouldn't count that as cheating. But if you're in a sport that is being tested and you're using anabolic steroids, that is cheating and that is bad. So, yeah. What to start with? So testosterone will always be your base because our bodies naturally produce testosterone, and any steroid we take is going to decrease the levels of testosterone that our body is producing. It's a negative feedback loop. So if my body sees that I have testosterone or some form of testosterone derivative, it's going to tell my body to stop producing natural testosterone. So you're going to get a suppression. Well, if I'm taking something like Dianabol, which is a derivative of testosterone but isn't a direct form of testosterone, I'm going to get a suppression from that. So my body's going to see that it's a form of testosterone and it's not going to produce testosterone. So that is why making the hormone testosterone, which is typically testosterone enthate or testosterone cypionate, your base hormone, your base steroid. You always want to make sure you have that in order to avoid the suppression you would get if you're running more than just a testosterone dose. What is a TRT level dose? Well, typically it's about 150 milligrams to 250 milligrams per week, I would say. However, this is dependent on blood work. You would go and take this dose, get your blood work done, and see if you fall within the 600 to 1200 nanograms per deciliter range, which is probably what you're aiming for to feel like you're normal. And then you have your enhanced dose, which is, this is my personal opinion, anything above 300 milligrams, you are running a dose that is higher than able to be that than your natural testosterone levels are able to be at, which makes you super physiological in terms of your testosterone and muscle building benefits. What will you need to get started on this journey? Well, if you have gone through your why and you understand the dosing protocol and what you need to do, hopefully you have a script for TRT. Then you would need that script to get that vial of anabolics or testosterone. You're going to need a syringe and a needle in order to draw and inject that testosterone, and you're going to need alcohol wipes. So alcohol wipes are very important. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it the proper way. We're going to make sure we're sanitizing, making sure our injection sites are clean, and we're not getting any infections, because the last thing you want is to feel great in the gym, do a bad shot, and then you end up giving yourself a massive welt or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't look pretty, and then abscess, and then you got to get it drained. So we don't want that. The other item, which I'll leave as optional because I don't think it's required unless you tend to aromatize highly. So the optional one would be the aromatase inhibitor, or a SERM, a selective estrogen receptor molecule. So an aromatase inhibitor and a SERM are two different drugs. However, they both act similarly. An aromatase inhibitor will actually affect the aromatase enzyme and block that enzyme from doing anything, whereas a SERM will decrease estrogen through receptor modulation, why it's called a selective estrogen receptor modulator. So these are optional because you're going to want to control your estrogen, and see what you feel good with, what you have side effects with, avoiding any gynecomastia. There's a lot of things that go into this that make it optional. Now we have blasting and cruising. So you've decided to do a steroid cycle, and you're now going to come off, and you're trying to decide, should I come off completely, or should I run a low dose of a TRT dose? So that would be blasting and cruising. You are running a high dose or multiple compounds at once, and then after you've run that for several months, you are coming down to hopefully go into a health phase to get healthier, and you want to keep your gains as much as you can. So you're going to do a dose of TRT like we described in the last slide. And some of the benefits of this are it's easier to hold your gains. You're probably going to have less mental side effects because you're not coming completely off and getting crashed testosterone. You're going to have longer anabolic exposure, which is going to allow you to hold more muscle. And you don't get that crash natural testosterone, as we just said. In terms of cycling, which may be a preferred route for people who don't want to be injecting all year round, this is where you come fully on and off of anabolics. It's going to require a PCT, which is typically Nolvadex and Clomid, which are two drugs that are going to help get your body producing natural testosterone again. The mental side effects of low test may be a little frustrating to deal with. You may feel a little bit of a depression because you're going from such a confident state to a potentially low testosterone state. You're also, the positive of the cycling is that you may be able to get back, and maybe key is a key phrase, maybe be able to get your natural levels of testosterone and other hormone markers back, as well as likely having a healthier blood profile. But this isn't going to say that you could blast and cruise and have a healthy blood profile, because you most certainly can, which can be another topic of on-cycle support of how to stay healthy if you're going to be blasting and cruising and staying on testosterone for long periods of time. Now we'll get into the male versus female classes. So on the right, you'll see the different three classes of steroids. So testosterone, DHT, and nandrolone. They're all different forms of the same molecule, just slightly changed and altered to through enzymes typically. So you have things like testosterone, testosterone base itself, equipoise, deballers are all derivatives of testosterone. Nandrolone, you hear things like MPP or DECA. All MPP is nandrolone phenylpropionate, and then you get things like Tren, which are also which is also a nandrolone base. What males are typically going to do is we don't really care. We we like the effects of androgenic drugs, which testosterone and androgen typically are, which gives us a lot of different options in terms of what anabolics could we potentially want to take. However, females may be a little bit more selective, especially ones who are really trying to avoid the male sex characteristic side effects, such as deepening of the voice, increased hair, um, higher aromatization rates, which could potentially affect your menstrual cycles. So women typically want to be taking, at least most of the women who want to keep their feminine side, is DHT. And DHT is a converted form of testosterone that no longer aromatizes because it has gone through the process of aromatization and no longer converts. So you're going to have no issue with having higher estrogen, higher androgenic effects. So, in conclusion, we talked about how we understand our why, understand the risks and benefits of taking anabolic steroids, the basics to start an anabolic cycle, as well as the role of male and female AAS selection. So I hope this was helpful. You guys can feel free to leave comments below for any topics you want to discuss, any points of discussion that came up in the video, agreements, disagreements, yada, yada, yada. And I'm looking forward to making more of these. So thank you guys, and I appreciate the support.